Academia by Peter Fleming, summarized by Detailed Book Summaries. Click on the subscribe button. Let us know in the comment the book you would love us to summarize for you. Chapter 1: The Necropolis of Neoliberal Academics. Peter Fleming begins his exploration by painting a grim but vivid portrait of modern universities, stripped of their romantic idealism and exposed as institutions hollowed out by neoliberal logic. Once upon a time, academia promised autonomy, intellectual curiosity, craft, and a vocation deeply tied to civic purpose. Today, it has become something else entirely, a darkocracy ruled by performance metrics, managerialism, and commercial imperatives. He argues that central to this transformation is the infiltration of new public management doctrines: efficiency, accountability, measurement. Universities now demand quantifiable outputs from staff, numbers of published papers, citation metrics, grant income, over concern for the intrinsic worth of teaching or the deep, often slow work of scholarship. The result is a professional environment that's suffocating, alienating, and hyper-competitive, a far cry from collegial self-governance. Fleming writes with a sharp, sardonic edge. The bureaucracy isn't some benign bulk, but a leviathan that reshapes what it means to be an academic. He also highlights how non-academic managers, often parachuted in from the corporate world, now dominate university leadership. These managers are disconnected from the mission of universities, yet wield enormous power. Their priorities lie less in nurturing scholarship than in growing institutional brands, squeezing costs, and maximizing student throughput. Fleming's critique is not abstract. He points out how academics' satisfaction with university management is catastrophically low. Chapter 2: The Marketization of Minds. From structural change, Fleming turns to the thriving commercial ethos in higher education. Universities no longer primarily exist for scholarship or public good. They are businesses, and students are clients. In this market-oriented vision, education is sold as a product. Degrees become investments. Students are consumers who demand value, ratings, and satisfaction. The pressure to attract and retain students fuels a corporate race, not just among faculties to publish, but among universities to build their reputations, climb rankings, and grow their market share. Fleming describes how this commercial logic warps academic purpose. Departments chase external funding, prioritize disciplines that are more marketable, and abandon research that cannot easily be monetized. The humanities, for instance, find themselves squeezed as practical disciplines are elevated and heavily promoted. The university transforms into a research and development factory. Knowledge production must justify itself in economic terms, not simply by its intellectual merit or cultural value. He also observes that administrators reframe academic labor in economic terms. Academics are no longer peers, but knowledge workers in a value chain. The sense of vocation, once the beating heart of intellectual life, is subsumed by branding, efficiency, and market metrics. As the institution commodifies, so too do its people. Academics compete not out of love of ideas, but for survival, recognition, and institutional favor. Chapter 3: Pain, Precarity, and Psychological Despair. Perhaps the most haunting part of Fleming's narrative is his attention to the human toll of these institutional changes. He doesn't shy away from the darkest consequences. Mental illness, self-harm, even suicides among academics become stark symbols of a system in crisis. These are not isolated tragedies, but systemic outcomes. Fleming insists, byproducts of an oppressive ecosphere of performance, insecurity, and alienation. He recounts real stories, academics devoting their lives to scholarship, but facing burnout in a regime that measures them like widgets. The untenured, underpaid underclass, who lack security and basic health protections, and even tenured professors who feel devalued, managed, and disrespected. Fleming sharply rejects the notion that these are simply mental health problems. Instead, he frames them as structural manifestations of dehumanization. As universities become more like factories and less like communities of inquiry, what makes things worse is that the very mechanisms meant to hold the institution accountable, performance reviews, managerial checks, KPIs, become the sources of misery themselves. Frequent monitoring, targets, email surveillance, and rigid appraisals create a climate of fear, not trust. Academics lose sense of meaning. Their work becomes transactional, not transformative. Fleming laments how the culture of metrics leaks into every corner of academic life, turning educators and researchers into cogs in a machine that measures them, but does not necessarily value them. Chapter 4: Managerialism's High Castle. As the crisis deepens, Fleming turns his gaze on managerialism, the regime of non-academic bureaucrats who oversee universities with corporate logic. These managers are not neutral technocrats. They embody a powerful ideology that conflicts with the traditional academic mission. Their logic is about brand, impact, efficiency, and stakeholder value, not collegiality or scholarship. In this world, senior executives often lack grounding in academic traditions, yet they wield disproportionate influence. Many line managers have little understanding of the disciplines they oversee, yet they enforce rigid compliance to performance metrics. This managerial class, untethered from academic life, reshapes universities to serve financial rather than intellectual ends. The ethos of peer judgment, once central to universities, has been replaced by top-down control. Fleming also implicates academics themselves in this managerial turn. Some academics buy into the system. Rewarded by metrics, they climb the ranks, become star researchers or administrators, or internalize the logic of competition and prestige. Others, more cynical, simply endure. But few resist structurally. The system incentivizes conformity. Fleming argues that this complicity is one of neoliberalism's greatest triumphs. It's not only imposed from the top, but absorbed in the very souls of academia's practitioners. Chapter 5: Crisis, Resistance, and Possible Redemption. Despite the bleak landscape, Fleming refuses to offer a purely fatalistic vision. He argues that time has nearly run out. Universities are dying, he warns, but they might yet be saved if we act now. His call is urgent. Academics, students, and staff must reclaim higher education before it is irreversibly transformed into a technocratic enterprise. He points to union movements, collective governance, and resistance as critical vectors for change. Labor actions, in his view, offer more than economic demands. They symbolize a fight for the very soul of the university. Fleming also suggests reimagining what universities could be, spaces of democratic self-governance rather than corporate command centers, forums for intellectual exploration, not just profit generation. Yet Fleming is no naive optimist. He acknowledges the scale of the challenge. Entrenched structures, powerful managerial classes, and a culture of complicity make reform difficult. Still, there is hope, not a naive hope for a return to a golden past, but a realistic belief that collective action, grounded in shared values, can reclaim a sense of purpose. He ends by urging staff and students to act, resist the commodification of education, fight for shared governance, and re-anchor the university in its original mission of inquiry, community, and public good. The death of the traditional academy is not inevitable, but silence and passivity may make it so. Click on the subscribe button. Let us know in the comment the book you would love us to summarize for you.